Is it really possible to survive on 1,000 euros a month in Italy? In my experience, the answer is yes. I live in the beautiful city of Turin, which has a lot to offer, including a lower cost of living than other major cities like Rome and Milan. So my situation is not necessarily the same as everyone's. There's a lot of things that can contribute to higher costs, but I just want to share my own personal experience because I've so far been happy with my living costs here in Italy. This will be a two-part series. In part one, I'll talk about how I'm able to live on 1,000 euros a month. In part two, I'll talk about some of the extra expenses, occasional expenses, larger expenses, and things that you do end up spending that you don't think about when you are calculating how much your monthly living costs will be. When I finish part two, I will link it here. When I talk about how much the cost of living is here, keep in mind, and the local salaries are much lower than you might have in the UK or the US or wherever you're from. So if you are living like a local and making a local salary, you'll want to keep your expenses around the same as the local. So let's get into the monthly expenses for one person here in the Turin area. So let's start with the big one, which is rent. My first apartment in Italy was 500 euros a month. These are some photos from when I first moved in. It was fully furnished and basically it was one large living space and a full kitchen. It was including the spese, which is the monthly condo fees. And it was 450 plus 50. So that was 500 total. It was a really good deal because it was in a prime neighborhood. And this was about 4.5 years ago. Since then, I'm sure that same apartment would be renting for 600 now. My second apartment that I just rented, I'm paying less in rent than my first apartment. So this apartment was unfurnished. I live further away from the city center than a lot of people prefer to live. Because of that, the rent is a lot lower. So my rent is actually around 400 euros a month total, 350 plus 40 spese. So it's 390 per month, which is the lowest rent I've ever had in my life. But keep in mind that unfurnished means there's no kitchen, no appliances. I had to install some light fixtures in my apartment. There was a closet, but like no shelves or any sort of places to store things. So you have to really bring everything. So I was really, really lucky to find this place. The average rent in Turin, even for unfurnished one bedrooms, it's usually around 5 to 600 for unfurnished. And then if you want a furnished apartment, probably pay between 6 and 800. And that's for a one bedroom. And if you want a two bedroom or more, it will go up from there. And if you want a prime central location, you'll probably be starting to look at 650 to 850, 900. It can go up from there. Most of the places that I was looking at was in the 5 to 700 euro range. 700 was my max that I wanted to pay, including the spese. But yeah, I lucked out and got this place and I'm really happy with it. And none of this includes utilities. So we'll go on to utilities next. Again, it varies. My last place, I had autonomous heating, which means that you have your own hot water heater and you can control your own heat. And I was just cranking it in the summer, in the winters, because I get cold and I just like a warm, toasty place. I think I averaged about 75 to 100 a month for gas and electric. Some of the months in the winter were a lot higher. In the summer and spring, that's a lot lower. So average, I think, is about 100 a month. And that was, I think, pretty high for that size of a place. But again, like I was not very thrifty about my heat usage. I haven't gone through a winter here yet, so I don't know how much the heating costs. It seems like the electric cost is a lot less. So far, I haven't used gas for cooking. Gas is a lot more expensive than heat. I don't have an oven or a stove yet. I just use my electric toaster oven and my electric induction stove. And so far, I think that's been saving me money because I don't really use gas yet. And so far, my electric bill has only been like 40 or 50 euros a month. The thing about utilities is that you can choose your utility company. From where I'm from in the US, you just had to go with whatever the utility company was that had a monopoly on your area. So here you can decide, you could change your utility company, you can shop around for lower rates. There's actually websites where you can choose your supplier based on the rates. That's what I did for this apartment. So far, it seems like it's made a difference compared to my last place, but I don't really know because, again, I haven't used a lot of gas. my heating is now centralized. So instead of having a thermostat in my apartment, there's a central boiler for the entire building. And I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that they calculate based on how much you use, but there's only certain times that the heat is allowed to be on. So in my case, I'm sure my bill will be lower because I won't be able to crank the heat all night, and I'm a little scared about that. It gets cold. And so we'll see. Moving on to another important utility is the internet. So if you have a shorter term lease, which means between I think 6 to 18 months, it's called the transitorio contract. The internet is usually included with the rent. But if you're in a long term apartment, you will be installing and figuring out your own internet. I used a different company the last time in my last place. That was 27 or 28 euros a month. And then this time I used my gas and electric company because they offered a deal if I did the internet too, and it's 22 euros a month. I would say the average maybe 25 a month. It's good. It's fiber optic. It's high speed. I've never had a problem. And there's again several companies you can shop around for the best rates. Sometimes there's an installation fee. I think with this deal I got, there was no installation fee. The service includes a modem and everything I need to stay connected. Cell phones here are also way less expensive than they are in the US. My phone plan is 15 euros a month. The plan I'm on also includes 100 minutes that I could call my home country. So most phone plans also include a few gigs of data for when you're roaming. I think it's most European countries and maybe some other countries too, where they automatically give you some form of phone service for when you're traveling. So that's really nice. And let's move on to food. I think I spend probably more than a lot of people because I do have some allergies and I buy some specialty foods. They can be more expensive. Anyway, even with all of my like dairy-free milk and gluten-free stuff that I get, I spend usually about 3 to 350 a month on groceries. And I don't even necessarily go to the cheapest places. You can save on groceries by going to the outdoor markets, which are actually less expensive than the supermarkets here. The fresh markets are usually only during the day, and sometimes they're only once a week. So there's plenty of supermarkets that are open every day, and most people I think do a mix of both. I don't really deny myself any groceries just to save money. That's one thing that I don't mind spending on. And also I don't eat out a lot. I pretty much cook all my meals. I just find it's usually healthier and I really enjoy cooking. So the next thing is household products that are not food. So like cleaning supplies and soaps and just things that you need around the house. I spend between 30 and 40 a month on these. So like soaps and bath products and just random things that you need. The next category, it doesn't apply to everyone, of course. It is pet supplies. I have one cat. I also I think spend more than the average person on cat food and litter. She has a lot of food issues also. I spend about 40 a month on her food and cat litter and all of that stuff. I'll talk about like vet stuff when I get into healthcare, which is going to be in my part 2 of this video. Another major cost that I think everyone has is transportation. As I've mentioned before, I don't have a car here. In my last apartment, it was in the city center, so I rarely used public transportation. So if you're in the city center of Turin, you can get by with mostly walking or biking. A lot of people bike. I could technically still bike to the city if I want to. If I had a bike, it would just be too far for me. And I don't mind taking the bus or metro. So I do use it a lot more here. So I spend about 20 to 25 euros a month on bus tickets, metro tickets. But if I bought a monthly pass, it would be 33 euros a month. And I think that could be even less if you pay annually. In the first couple of months that I moved into my new apartment, I thought I would be using it a lot. And so I got the bus, the monthly pass, but then I realized that I don't necessarily go into the city center very often or anywhere far from where I live. So the last category is entertainment. And I include going out to eat in this category because I don't go out to eat very often. Usually for me, it's something social. I do it like once a week, maybe, or once every couple of weeks. and sometimes it's meeting friends for lunch or brunch or even a fun coffee drink in the afternoon. And there's always time for an aperitivo. Aperitivo is like, it's equivalent to like happy hour, where you can get a cocktail or a beverage and then a bunch of little snacks. And usually it's a good deal, it's a good price. Sometimes they charge extra for the snacks. Sometimes you can get like tapas and order whatever you like. Sometimes they just bring out whatever. Sometimes it's a buffet. So I'm a big fan of aperitivo, but I don't do it very often. There's also a lot of free events in the city. A week or two ago, I went swing dancing, which was really fun and it was free. There's one day a month where museums are free. I've also gotten the museum pass, which is for residents here, which is 55 euros for the year. When you have that pass, you can get into most of the museums in the entire region of Piemonte. It's a really, really good deal. If I go out to lunch, usually I spend like 12 euros, 15 euros. If I go out to dinner, it's maybe like 20 to 30, but it can definitely go up. You buy multiple courses and you eat out all the time. You could definitely spend 50 to 100 euros per person for dinner, but there's plenty of really good food that you can get for really a good cost. I usually spend like 40 or 50 euros a month on going out, sometimes less, sometimes it's like 30. And that doesn't mean I don't go out, but I just don't usually spend a lot of money when I go out. Sometimes you go out for coffee and it's €1. And sometimes it's nice to get out of the city. There are plenty of hiking trails and mountains to explore, not too far from Turin. So I added up all of my expenses for the last month, which was pretty average for me. And the total was 1,032 euros. So a little bit over 1,000. That's what it's like to live like a local here in Turin, Italy. Be sure to come back for part 2, where I talk about extra costs and some of the hidden costs of living abroad. Thanks for watching. And remember, you only have one life, so start living it.